Hi, I'm Debbie Montgomery Johnson, founder of the nonprofit The Woman Behind the Smile, and your host of Stand Up and Speak Up, a show that is about each and every one of us. Many of us have something we're hiding, something we're ashamed of, something that through no fault of our own or through our own making, we keep hidden, and that in turn keeps us hidden from each other and the world. Good people go through terrible situations. Wise people know when and how to let it go. Everything that happens to us helps us grow, and while it may be hard to see it right away, the most important thing to do is to change your perception about your circumstances. Regardless of what your personal experiences or traumas have been, this showcase series is designed to ignite the light in you, as well as providing safe harbor, education, personal growth, and resources, so that no matter where you are on your journey, you'll have the courage to move on when you're ready. Stand Up and Speak Up features ordinary people who've been through extraordinary situations and struggles and then found the courage to step out from behind their smiles and speak up about their experiences and the lessons gleaned from those experiences. Everybody heals at a different pace, and we recognize that. So come on in, have a listen, and enjoy the ride at your own speed.
It's a beautiful day in paradise, and this is Debbie coming to you from South Florida, and honestly, today is a gorgeous March 17th, and I believe it's St. Patrick's Day. So happy St. Patrick's Day, and I don't have a whit of green on me. I'm German, Norwegian, and everything, but a little bit of Irish, and my Irish mother-in-law would be turning over saying, oh my gosh, bring out the corned beef. So today's a fun day. Like I said, it's a beautiful day. I don't know what's up with my friends in Canada. They aren't able to get on right now, but it is cold in Canada, and I'm really grateful that I'm down here in South Florida. My guest is from South Florida. She's down in Miramar, and it's, I'm sure, beautiful down there. So I would love to welcome my new friend, Nicki Hu. Nicki, are you there?
Thank you so much, Debbie. I'm so excited to be on here.
Well, this is fun. Nicki and I have not met in person, which is not unusual for most of our guests, especially during this pandemic. However, I was a guest on her show. It was a summit that's coming up called Manifesting Incredible Love. And that's going to be coming up in a couple of weeks. And I'm really excited to have Nicki talk about that. But, Nicki, I like to start my show off by going back in time and going to your background. I would love to hear about your family, where you grew up, and we'll go from there. What are the things that you loved to do as a child? But where did you grow up, and tell me a little bit about your family.
Oh, man, thank you so much. So I am of Asian descent. I'm Chinese American, but I grew up actually in New York. Born in Manhattan, raised in Corona, and then moved down to Florida. And a little bit of my family history, traditional Asian immigrants who moved here to find better opportunities. So a lot of my childhood really looked like my parents, they worked a lot. Like my mom was a seamstress, my dad was in construction, but he also gambled. So once he lost everything, they moved here to Florida to start a new life. And I stayed in New York with my aunt for a year, and then I came down here. But as a child, you know, they began in the flea markets, and I'm not sure if you're aware of how the flea markets were back in the day. They had the swap shop with the circus. I was just a tiny kid. I would be like 5 or 6 while my parents set up their banana boxes and sold their merchandise. Me and my sister, we would kind of scurry off and go upstairs and peek through the railings to watch the circus. And yeah, my childhood was pretty freeing. But as I grew older, like we really prioritized working. So on the weekends, like my parents, I would say they upgraded from a flea market to like an actual physical location, but we did many things before then. We had a restaurant that didn't work, and then we went into wholesale and retail. So they owned a couple of warehouses, and every weekend I would work at the warehouses, 9 a.m. in the morning until 6 p.m. in the afternoon. And that was the majority of my childhood, I remember.
I was talking to my husband, and when I asked him about his childhood, he goes, I didn't have a childhood. I'm like, what are you talking about? He, like you, did a lot of work. And he worked at the golf course, and he was always caddying. He was always working, always working. His father was in construction also, and always working. And then they started a business, always working. And he's got the most incredible work ethic, to the point of everybody else around you should be doing the same thing, right? So you were working as a child. Did you have any time? I mean, I'm watching the circus, but did you have any hobbies or did you like to read? What did you do in your free time, if you even had free time?
Well, I did a lot of art. So even though I worked, I would have my piece of paper and my pen sitting at the cash register, and I would draw comics. And I was really into like anime at the time. So I would paint, I would draw, and that was my escape outside of work. Like, I didn't really have friends. I didn't go out. And like you said, like, we had an incredible work ethic, and I enjoyed working. Funny enough, like, I enjoyed working. I enjoyed the thrill of, I guess, making my parents happy at the time. They were like, oh, my God, you're making so much money. Like, you're doing so well. The interactions with the customers. I was very shy at first, but just having the customers say, like, thank you so much for your help, like, that made me happy. And I became more and more social after.
Do you feel like you're a people pleaser? Is that important to you?
Definitely. I think in a way I've become accustomed to people pleasing, because I was never taught that saying no was okay. And I enjoyed, like, making other people happy, seeing that they were satisfied. So that did stick with me.
How is your relationship with your folks when you were little? Did they ever play with you? Or again, I understand the work probably took over a lot of your family time. Was there any downtime where you could just sit and play or listen to stories or things like? Were your grandparents around?
No, actually, they were in China.
Okay.
They were still in China at the time, but my only downtime, like, I would say when I was home, I'd spend a lot of time on the computers by myself. But my parents weren't always there because they prioritized work a lot. So after work, they would be doing chores, running errands, and it would just be me and my sister.
How about education when you were little? Was school a priority for you?
I enjoyed school mainly because I remember, like, younger, I enjoyed school. My teachers were very nice. They made it fun. There was, like, picnic reading time, and that was younger. As I got older, I felt like school was something mandatory. Like, I had to do it, and I was naturally good at it. So I never had I never disliked school just because I was naturally good at it. And I had this expectation that we were supposed to be, highly educated, and it just never fazed me to question.
Do you ever feel the pressure of that, though?
From school? Yes.
From parents, or when you said expectation, I'm thinking, oh, I had some of those. And when I went away to private school, it was very difficult because everybody there was the top of the class, and now half of you weren't going to be. And there was a lot of pressure to excel, and it might have been self-induced or trying to please the parents or the teachers. It's interesting to see it, at my age now, and how when my kids were in school, I tried not to put the pressure on them, although I wanted them to do well. It was more as, what can we do to make you a good student or a better student, or, be more polite and responsible to your teachers, rather than get the A, get the A, get the A, because I saw the pressure of grades sometimes degraded the actual learning, because you were graded on tests. You weren't graded on what you were learning. And I was just curious, because especially in the Asian community, and this is generalization, but I had a lot of friends that were Asian, there was a lot of pressure for them to be at the top, and disappointment if they didn't do it. Did you ever feel that, or were you always at the top?
I would say I was always at the top, but I was never like the number one student. I was probably like a little bit more down there, but my parents didn't care as much. They just voiced that they wanted me to be educated, that they wanted me to be good in school, but they didn't have metrics for what that looked like. And when you said like self-induced pressure, I really think it was self-induced pressure. Like I was surrounded by other Asians too when I was in high school. Everybody was in AP classes, which was above honors, which was like, I was like, oh, you're in AP calculus and AP history and AP biology and AP chemistry. And I'm sitting here like, I'm really struggling through AP calculus. Like that's the only AP class that I have.
When you look at you and your sister, how are your personalities the same, and how are they different?
The funny thing is I'm the most rebellious, and I feel like I'm here to kind of break the trauma like in my family, because we're all very rebellious towards my mom and how she wants us to be. We do not conform to her whatsoever. But for me, I'm the most outwardly like rebellious in terms of career-wise. I was just like, I'm not doing what you want me to do. It doesn't fit with what I want to create in my life, and I don't believe in certain things where like value, money is the most valued asset a person can have, or success is the most valued asset that a person can have. I did not believe in that.
So let's explore that, because I'm sitting here going, oh, I think I might have known that, but I didn't know that. Because you also mentioned something too about your parents and how they had a business and they lost the business, or they didn't do well. So if the value is on prosperity and money, how did that affect you as a family when that didn't work?
They moved because they knew there was opportunity, and so failure was not an option for them. That was the only way that they were going to survive. So my mom, she's very resilient. Like, I will give her that. I will say I got those genes from her because she never gives up. She's so creative. So when the business didn't work, they tried, for example, like the flea market. They would have a location in one flea market, and then my father would go to a different location in another flea market. When we expanded into warehousing, the warehouses, we bought up to 5 locations within the same area, within the same location. And even though we sold the exact same thing, people did not know. So we were our own competition. So she's very creative in that sense. And afterwards, when business dipped in the warehousing district, she rented out the interior of the warehouse. So for example, like if you walked into a Walmart, there's like a pizza shop, or like maybe a nail salon, and all these little businesses within that one big business. Mm-hmm. That's what shifted too.
So she saw a vision beyond. She didn't let the fall stop her. It was a bounce.
No.
Do you feel like you had that capability too? Did you learn that from Mom, and have you put that to work in your life?
I would say I got her resilience, but I did not get the creativity because I didn't get the confidence when I was younger. Mm-hmm. Because her power was so overshadowing that I was just like, yes, Mom, whatever you want, Mom. And at some point, that people pleasing kicked in, where I had no ability to make my own decisions because I was so terrified of being wrong. I was so terrified of like, this is, I'm not good enough to make my own choices in life.
So what was it what was the rebellious point, that defining moment that you just said, I'm doing my own thing, and you didn't care?
Oh, man. Corporate. When I started corporate.
So Mom didn't want you to go into corporate, or what were her expectations?
No, Mom wanted me to go into corporate. She of course wanted me to get a good job. Like, I originally wanted to go to art school, and she's like, you're not going to get anything from art school. So I settled for business school. And in business school, I got my first job from one of those clubs, working at a cruise line, Celebrity Cruises, as customer service. And I was so excited because that was my first taste of freedom. No expectations of the business on my shoulders. I just got paid. Like, I just sat down at my desk, and I would get paid no matter what work I did. And after 2 years of working there, after the first year, I got promoted to like supervisor. And then I realized that there was a ceiling, that I could not get the financial freedom that my parents had, even though they say they struggled, even though I experienced the stress firsthand of the expectations of, oh my God, we need to, make money somehow. I just knew that I saw my mom grow her tiny little business from a swap shop when I was a kid to owning multiple warehouses. And here I was sitting at a desk making $15 an hour and being promoted, making $17 an hour. And I was like, this is not the life I want for me. Only 1 week of vacation, not being able to grow. And so I quit. But I didn't tell anybody. I did not tell my mom for a whole year. She had no idea that I quit my job.
How did you do that? Were you living at home, or were you on your own?
I lived with my husband. Well, he was my boyfriend at the time.
Okay.
He was my boyfriend at the time, but I stayed with him and his family. And I would, when she called, I would just be like, oh, yeah, hi, Mom, how are you doing? But we would never really talk about work. She's like, how's work? I'm like, yeah, it's good. And she's like, when are you going to get a better job? I'm like, I don't know.
I'm looking at your picture here, and it's beautiful, and you're smiling. I'm thinking, oh, my gosh, this is the woman behind the smile. You are, you're a young version of me, where you put up the smile and say, yep, things are fine. And on the other side, maybe not so. Did your mom ever catch on?
I confessed to her at the end of the year, and it was so funny. I started my own clothing line. I went through manufacturing. I manufactured my first three different sets. I sold them to my friends. I tabled them at like LA Fitness and Orange Theory. And then I hit a plateau. I did not know what to do next. And all of that self-doubt came back up of like, I don't know what I'm doing. Maybe my mom's right. Like, this is really hard. Like, entrepreneurship is really hard. Let me do something that she would respect. And at the end of December, I was like, let me do something my mom would be proud of. Let me sign up for real estate. And so I called her one day and I said, Mom, guess what? I'm no longer working at my customer service job. I'm going to become a real estate agent. And she was just like, oh, that's great, but why, right? Like, she was so confused. She was like, but why? And she didn't believe me after I told her, because I didn't see opportunity. I wanted to grow bigger, and you always wanted me to be in real estate, didn't you? And she hung up the phone. She called my sister, and of course my two sisters at the time, they were hiding the secret from me. And they immediately texted me. They were like, Mom just asked me why you quit your job. And she was like, did you tell her? Like, what's happening right now? And I was like, yeah, I told her I quit my job. I'm going to go into real estate. And my other sister's the same. She was like, did you tell Mom you quit your job? Because she's calling me right now. And I just thought at the time, I said, why is it that she didn't trust me from my own mouth that I was quitting real estate? I mean, I was quitting my job to go into real estate. And she had to confirm it with like 5 other people.
What'd the girls say? I mean, everybody seemed to be shocked that you said something, that you actually spoke up.
Yeah.
mom's the controlling factor. Yes.
She is. And my sisters had my back all the time. Like, we had each other's back because we already knew that, like, you know, my mom's views were she was very set in her ways. Like, she wanted what she wanted and only what she wanted. So any type of freedom we had was like, keep it between us, right? Like, keep it between us. So they didn't tell her anything. They were like, oh, I don't know. She didn't tell me this.
So there's a whole family of women behind the smiles. Oh, my goodness. Okay, I understand this. It makes me laugh as we get older. I'm thinking, oh, there's such wasted time when we do things like that. So I know that you met your husband when you were young. You guys met in middle school. Were you with him the whole time, or was it on and off? Because I'm sure he's watching all of this, and I'm curious as to what his point of view was and what his suggestions to you were about your mom. Obviously, you said, move in with us, get away from them. How did he feel, and how did he support you in all of this?
He did not like my mom because my mom didn't like him. But it was very innocent, sweet love. Like, we hung out a lot. We went to the movies. We would hang out, like, after school together. And as we got older, we can see the dissonance in the family. Like, my grandma moved here to take care of my younger siblings, and she would be very welcoming. She would see his good heart, and she would say, like, oh, you know, come over whenever, and we would hang out. But my mom did not see that. She would only see the negative things. His parents are divorced. You know, she's like, he never had a father figure. He's going to divorce you in the future. And he's very rebellious as a kid, or like he would fight with his little brothers. And I'm like, they're in middle school. Of course they fight. Like, they're kids. And she would use all of those tactics against me dating him. She would be like, you can be his friend, but you should date other people. And he experienced that resistance through me. And I was always told, you know, like, you need to marry somebody who's higher educated, whose parents are together, whose parents come from good money, whose parents have good money, who's 2 years older than you. And those were my, like, expectations. Like, those were her expectations for me.
That's tough to live with, and I know that happens. And then you, Miss Rebellious, said, not for me, right? So how did you and Tony get together, run off, leave Mom behind?
We kept our relationship hidden from middle school all the way into college. And the only reason she found out was because somebody in China told her. And I was like, who in the hell, like, found out in China? Like, what the heck?
Small world, my friend. It's a small world.
And she called me one day while I was in school, and I was still terrified of her. But I was, like, secretly being rebellious behind her back. And I was in school in the library, and she's like, my knees are going weak, Nicki. I just heard from this distant relative in China that you're dating Tony. And I broke down in tears in the library because I kept the secret hidden for so long. And when she found out, her disappointment that her knees were weak, she said, that crushed me. Like, I was so sad. But I knew her standing, and I knew where I stood, and I was just like, I couldn't say anything.
Were you guys able to ever work that out?
No, I cut her off in December for my own peace and happiness. But, you know, things were never bad. Like, we never fought because I never raised my voice against her. But I did feel very upset. And to your question of whether or not she accepted him, not until the last fighting bit of her up to my marriage, she made my wedding all about her, and my husband he was really upset because he was like, "This is your day, and she's making it about her." And she said she wasn't even going to come to the wedding because I wasn't willing to have it in New York. And I was like, how is that relevant to celebrating my happiness in my life? And she's like, oh, because, people owe me money. And if you get married in New York, they give you money as a gift. And they owe me money because I've given them family money. And so I don't see a purpose in coming to your wedding if you're not going to accept the money that, I've given to these people. So I said, okay, don't come to my wedding. But of course, she's very smart in the way that she handles her business. So she calls his biological dad, and he's in New York. And she said, he's your only son now because he had a falling out with his other two children. She said, he's your only son now. Give him a wonderful wedding. Pay for his wedding in New York. And he calls up and he says, Nikki's mom just called me. I want her to be happy. I want you guys to be a happy family. I want to give you a good start. I'm willing to pay for the wedding in New York. And he looks at me. He says, it's what you want, babe. And I said, and of course, me and my mom tendencies, my mom issues, I said, if it makes her happy, we'll do one here and we'll do one in New York. But those are the terms. She comes to the one here, and then we'll do one in New York next year. And it never happened because she, it just, I wasn't happy. She wasn't happy. Nobody was happy. And I was like, I'm not going through this again. I'm never going through this again.
Oh, wow. And, love is supposed to make people happy and draw families together, and it can be really destructive. And it's interesting that you've turned into a love coach and a healer, emotional healer. So how did you transition into that kind of work from corporate or your clothing line, that kind of stuff? How did you move forward into that, given your experiences with a lack of love in some spots with your mom?
It was really lack of self-love that caused a lot of sabotaging behaviors and limiting beliefs in my business as well. During COVID, a group of people here in Florida who were doing virtual calls for meditation. And I was very interested at the time. I wanted to know how to create more inner peace. Those were the first people who showed me what true love, what true community can do. I cried to them. They cried on the call. And that was my first time seeing anybody being vulnerable. And everybody else was supporting them. Everybody on that phone call was like, you're an amazing person. Trust the universe. Trust that everything's happening for you. And I was like, oh my God, what is this? Where has this been my whole life? And I shared my experiences, my trauma, and I cried with them for 2 months straight. I did my emotional healing with them. And that's when I decided I wanted to be a coach. I wanted to provide this experience for other people who were going through the same thing as me. But what really initiated relationship this year is my own personal breakdown, in my own relationship. So I fell in love with somebody else during the time that I was with my husband. And it was, in the spiritual community, we call it a karmic connection. But in practical terms, it was a trauma bond. It was all the unhealed wounds that I had that I was attracted to somebody who would trigger all of my healed wounds. So the things that I valued at the time, which was I wanted to look good because that's what my mom valued. I wanted to be valued for my success. And that's what the person who came after, who came and approached me was I want to be in your presence because you're working out at the gym. You look fantastic. You're starting your own business. He was appreciating all of the things that I wanted to be appreciated for. when I was a kid. And I developed like an emotional connection to that. But then there were also aspects that were red flags. Like he did not know how to hold emotional space for me. When I became too clingy, when I had attachments, when I was like, why aren't you texting me back on time? Like, why are you talking to other women? And I'm such a novice in relationships because I've only been in one, that I had no idea that this is what we call, like, quote unquote, what a toxic relationship looks like, where it's a back and forth of like, you know, he cannot commit and cannot hold space emotionally, and yet I was the one running back and then fighting that I didn't want to be in a relationship like that. I was like, I don't want to be with somebody who doesn't even care about me. And then he would come back around and love bomb me, like, oh, you know, I'm so sorry, I made a mistake, like, I see your value, I want to do, like, I'm going to be a better person, and all of these false promises that never happened. It was just words. It was pretty words. Through that back and forth was the first time I experienced what true heartbreak felt like, because what triggered me was that he hurt my insecurity because I didn't heal my insecurity. When he abandoned or quote unquote just like left me, ghosted me, it made me feel not good enough again. It made me feel like that little girl that whatever I did was never good enough. But it also made me realize that I was willing to sacrifice like a really, really good relationship. We never fought. Like me and my husband, we don't fight. We just communicate so natural with each other. It made me believe that, like, because I didn't feel that intoxicating emotional pull towards somebody, that his love was not enough. And I was willing to sacrifice that to chase an emotional high, you know, to chase the validation.
It's really interesting to me, Nicki, to hear you describe how you were feeling during that relationship, because it brings to mind in my world being, you know, in love or infatuation with, well, in my case, it turned out to be a scammer, but someone I didn't know, but someone that I had projected my relationship with, that was going to be my future. And, you know, of course, my first husband had passed away, so I didn't have anybody in competition with this guy. But essentially, you were being duped. You were being scammed by a guy in person who was doing everything that my scammer did, you know, but he was here in person. And when you call them on it, then they get angry, and then they, you know, like they said, they ghosted you, but then they come back, and it's this back and forth, and it's emotional trauma. And it's tough. I'm thinking of how did your husband, well, did he ever find out about this? Obviously he knows now, but how did you reconcile that relationship with your marriage?
I would say one of the biggest things is that he has a very healthy relationship to himself. Like, he learned how to emotionally regulate through his healthy childhood. So for him, it was easy to see the diamond in the rough. Like, he valued me for that. He did not see the actions that I took as something against him. Right? Like, it didn't feel like a betrayal against him. Yes, he was upset, of course. And I asked him, I asked him before I said, I'm going to share my story with Debbie's radio show. Like, I'm going to put it in my bio from now on. And I said, are you okay with me mentioning this? Because it is an act of betrayal. Like, people are going to wonder, like, why are you still with somebody who cheated on you or had an emotional affair, all of those things. And I even, going through my trauma, I had asked him, did I traumatize you? Do you carry trauma in your childhood from your father, from your biological father not being there? And he was like, no. And I said, why did you forgive me? Like, are you sure you forgave me? Like, I didn't trust that he forgave me, because he never brought it up ever again. He was just like, it's okay. Like, I understand. And he never brought it up again. And so I asked him, I said, why don't you want to talk about it? Why don't you want to ask me, like, what happened? Like, aren't you curious what happened? And he said, there's no point in re-triggering the past. The past is the past. Like, I see you for who you are, and everybody makes mistakes. And there was a moment in my relationship that was very recent, actually, where after I found my deep connection to spirituality, I was like, I don't know if I want to be in this relationship because I feel like my path is differing from yours. And that moment, he said, I want you to be happy. So I'm willing to, oh my God, I'm going to cry. He said, I'm willing to let you go because I want you to be happy. But I will always be here for you. And he's like, this, because I know this is what I want. And I realized at that moment that he chose me unconditionally. And I knew in that moment, I stood firm with my decision for like a week. But in that moment, he decided that he was going to shift his life, that he did not want to be in his dead-end job either. And he wanted to raise a family together. And he took me out on dates. We spent time together. It like reignited the passion in the bedroom too. Like, he has never wanted me more. And I say this now because we sacrifice so much of ourselves in our relationships that we think we can't stand up and choose the best direction. But when you grow as a person, your partner grows with you. And for me to take a stand and say, I'm going to choose me, he stood and he said, well, I'm going to choose you and I'm going to choose my future with you. And I'm going to quit my job and I'm going to pursue my passion, whatever that is.
That's very powerful on both your parts. And I'm thinking the word that came to me to describe him is kind. He just sounds like a kind, generous, understanding fellow. And as far as opening up about the story, I think as you tell it, it will, for me, telling stories about vulnerability is very powerful from the inside out. And the vulnerability makes you so much more of a magnet to others that are going through the same thing. And because initially when I was listening to some of the things that you've done, and I had to laugh because I'm like, oh my gosh, she's so young. They've been in this relationship for relatively a short period of time, even though for you 11 years or however is a long period of time. Now, I was looking at being married for 26 years and then now being married again for another 7. And my parents being together for 65 years. There's longevity. But you've lived a lot of things in a short period of time. And to identify the things that you needed and express them, and then go through the emotional, ties to somebody else, that's tough. And it's tough for him too. I mean, I survived an indiscretion on my husband's part, and I didn't know about it. So I was the last one to find out. And for me, the scam triggered that emotion again because I'm like, oh my gosh, now I'm part of something. But a confession was really hurtful, and I questioned myself. I questioned, was I not a good enough wife? Was I not good enough at this? And I'm like, oh my gosh, it wasn't my fault, But I learned how to be better, maybe a better wife, a better person. Of course, I had 4 children too, so there was a lot going on in my life. But it makes you understand your relationship a little bit better when there's something like that. You don't go seeking that. You don't want to threaten a relationship. But because it happened and you can't change what happened, you can change how you're feeling about those things. And I'm really glad that you guys embraced, choosing each other and moving forward, because you've since then had a baby. And having a baby changes a relationship. Now you've taken on a role as mom. And as I found out in interviewing my parents, and talking to my daughter, who's a mom of two, she goes, "Isn't it amazing that we go from being single to young marrieds to having children, and all of a sudden you don't have a life outside of being a parent?" And as the kids grow up, we don't look back at our parents thinking, well, they had a life outside of being mom or dad. And we can't forget our lives outside of being parents. So how are you now creating a life with a child, but keeping the love strong in your marriage, and now moving out and spreading this as a coach? How are you working all those different things at the same time and not losing yourself?
Oh my goodness, thank you for this question, because it's beautiful. What truly shifted was I put my values are now aligned. Like, I know where my values are, what's really, truly important for me, and I live life based on those values. So I used to hustle for the money, and now I don't. Now, in the morning, I wake up, I go to the gym, I take care of my body. Then in the afternoon, I'd eat lunch with my husband. I'd spend time with my son, and then I focus on work. And then in the evenings, I go back and I spend time with my husband and my son. And on the weekends or, certain days, because of the time freedom that I've created, I'll go out to a nice restaurant, or hang out with my friends. Stepping into your power and not being afraid to do that, because the right people will choose you. The right people will always choose you.
Yeah. And that's something, and you need to choose the right people to be around you, the right people for you, because so many times we hold on to relationships that really aren't good for us anymore, just because they've been around you for such a long time. And I've found I've lost friends in the last few years because I've grown, because I've changed direction, and I've moved forward in a direction that's good for me. Might not have been good for them. And losing old friends, quote unquote, that's difficult for me, because I always want, to pull them back, to come back and have it the way it was. And it's like, it's not good for you to do that. So you have to kind of okay, reason, you're here for a season and for a reason. And now we've all moved on. And then you put really great people around you, right? You bring better people around you, and that's what's cool. So you have a summit coming up, because our hour is flying by. You have a thing coming up soon. Can you tell me a little bit about it? Tell my audience about it. And how did you select the people? You have quite an array of people that are going to be speaking in your summit. Can you kind of tell us about that and how you put it together?
Yes. So the summit comes from the heart. It comes from me knowing that everybody here deserves to have incredible love in their life, and not letting certain things stop, to stop that. The fears, the limiting beliefs, the patterns, it does not define who you are and who you get to love in the future, and who gets to love the incredible parts of you. So I've reached out to some of the biggest people in the industry, some of the people that I follow, that I admire, and for them to share their specialty. For example, creating love in 90 days, understanding the psychology of men, how to get and keep your relationship. We have topics in creating sexual intimacy, better connection, energy healing even, right? How you can take how these speakers have created amazing, incredible love in their life and transform that and take that with you to create incredible love in your life. And I'm excited because, Debbie, your interview is in there too.
How can people sign up for the summit? How long is it going to be? Kind of the format. And then your last words for how can we find love in all the right places?
Yes, thank you. So you can connect with me through my summit at manifestincrediblelove.com or my main platform. Reach out to me on Instagram. It's Nicki.Hu. And how can we create love in our life in all the right places is understanding you. Everything that you desire and it's a hell yes to, that's what you follow. And those yeses are going to lead you to find love in all the right places.
Okay. We're going to say yes. But in my life, in my work with internet love, be careful, beware, and be aware. Nicki, thank you so much for being my guest today. But I love what you're doing. I love the experiences that you've had and that you're going to put yourself out to the world in a great way in your summit coming up in April. So I'll put this out to them. I want to thank your husband for supporting you and telling your story. It's really important to stand up and speak up and not be the woman behind the smile. And like I said, I love your picture. I was looking at it the whole time. And you bring joy to me today. And I just wish you and your family the very, very best.
Thank you. You as well.
Thank you for listening to Stand Up and Speak Up. We are dedicated to encouraging you to remove the mask of embarrassment and to being your best self. If you are the victim of a scam or cybercrime, please visit againstscams.org for assistance and guidance about options and recovery. SCARS, the Society of Citizens Against Relationship Scams, is an incorporated nonprofit crime victims assistance organization based in Miami, Florida, supporting scam victims worldwide. If you can, make a small donation to help victims around the world receive the help they need. This episode has been sponsored by BenfoComplete.com, a vitamin supplement company that supports happy and healthy hands and feet for those with neuropathy. If you or anyone you know struggles with the pins and needles or numbness in their hands and feet, check out our benfotiamine products at benfocomplete.com. Use the special code STANDUP for a 5% discount on your purchase. Again, thank you for being with us today. Go to my website, The Woman Behind the Smile, for additional resources and information. Subscribe to my YouTube channel and enjoy the replays. My books are all available on Amazon.com and Audible, and I encourage you to join us again. Have a great day.